Welcome to Soul Nutrition, where we discuss the various ways of nourishing our souls. I'm your host, Reina Rose, and today's guest is Karissa Williams. Karissa is a speaker, coach, best-selling author, boss babe, and mother. While going through her own mental and physical transformation, Karissa began helping others achieve health and life goals through simple teaching habits. She brings practical, real-world experience to her coaching, mentoring, and speaking engagements. With her concoction of personal setbacks and achievements paired with high-energy vibes that enable her to connect deeply with her audiences and create inspiring and transformational talks. She believes that personal and professional development go hand in hand when it comes to living happy, healthy, and successful lives. She also understands the daily struggles we all navigate as we attempt to live a more balanced life. Karissa truly enjoys teaching about how to boss up and rise above our current situation. Karissa, it's such an honor to have you on the show today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
So tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you get to this place where you're bossing up and teaching others how to do the same?
Oh, it's through all the setbacks that I've gone through, honestly.
Oh.
Let's see, if I had to just kind of give you a short version of kind of where I got to where I am today. It's about 10 years ago, I weighed 213 pounds. I was definitely ashamed of my body, and I was coping with past experiences of like childhood trauma and toxic abusive relationships as a teen. And I just used food and honestly cigarettes and booze and work and everything to kind of numb out the pain. I kind of lost my way in that like 5 years of in between my son's dad and my ex-husband. But so 10 years ago, I had an aha moment, and I was sitting in the doctor's office, and she was like, girl, if you don't change your lifestyle right now, you're not going to probably be with us later on. Like, and I was like, oh my gosh, right? Like it was a punch to the gut, because I imagine my mom has always been 320 like plus pounds, right? She's always been overweight my entire life. I've never known anything other than that. And she is like an ultimate boss babe in my mind. She truly inspires me. But I've never seen that held her back. Like there was never once like, oh, it's unhealthy to be 300 plus pounds, you know? And so when I heard that, and she was like, you're obese I'm 5 foot and I'm 213. And I was like, what? You just used the O word on me? I was like, are you kidding me? But I needed that. I needed the honest truth, like almost slapped across my face to remind me that I'm like, whoa, if I keep going down this path, I'm going to be in the exact same path that my mom's on. And that was cancer and diabetes and like quality of life, like lack of energy. It was just terrible. And when I looked back, and I could step back and be like, wow, I want more for myself. Like I don't know what I need to do, but I want more, right? I need to move my body. I need to eat cleaner. And I got so hyper focused in on just becoming a thinner version of me at the time. That's all I could really think about. I was like, I just need to get healthy. What does that even look like? Just lose weight. And so that's kind of what started. It was an aha moment. It was a life-changing experience in a doctor's office. And then the next day it got to the point where I was like, I saw that picture of my mom and I was like, wow, I want more. I want more for my kids. You know, I want to be around for my kids later on. Cause I could see watching my mom go through all of that and her battle with everything. So that's kind of started the health and the wellness journey, if you will. But we were stationed in Germany when that happened. And when I got back to the States, I happened to lose my mom. I lost her to cancer, had to make that tough decision to let her go. In fact, in St. Louis, Missouri, like you never forget those moments, but you know, where my heart dropped and I had to make that decision. And I could have allowed that to like spiral me out of control. Cause again, I used to eat when I was sad and depressed and, you know, like that was my comfort. And instead I was like, no, I need to stay healthy so that, you know, I am not dying 20 years from now when my kids are, you know, making these hard decisions. So I made it a point over the next 5 or 6 years to continue my health journey. Well, I guess 3 or 4 years to continue that like work. And the community, when I got back and I guess laid my mom to rest and I made peace with that, knowing where she was and knowing that like if we didn't care about weight in our family, but we did know like where you go when you pass, you know, and I'm like, okay, there's peace of mind knowing that I'm going to see my mother again in heaven. And I could just like, I embraced that. I was like, I have peace there. Like it's difficult. Sure. We all grieve differently. But I had peace in my heart knowing that I would see her again, my best friend. So I was like, what am I supposed to do? I've always worked for my mom. I've always grown up in the back of a shop, you know, of a bridal shop, like the little girl that gets to play around and things and watch her parents work. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to start a business. So at 26, I was like, what did I love about my mom's shop? And I was like, I love, you know, X, Y, and Z. What I did not love, and I was like, I don't love the brides. And so I was like, they were just really high maintenance and very stressful anymore. And I was like, okay, so I'm just gonna work with guys. And I opened up my own tuxedo and suit shop in town. And that then led me to my next career move. About 2 years into my shop, I'm always one that like when God opens the door, right, there's a reason. Like step into it and have faith that something is supposed to happen there. And so there was a gal sitting in my office while sitting in my tuck shop, and we were chatting, and she's like, listen, I'm looking for a replacement and I need X, Y, and she's like listing all the qualifications. And I was like, girl, I don't know anyone looking for a job like that. I had no idea she was there to like pull me away from my business. But like anything, I was like, you know what? I will sit on it. I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to say yes, but let me see how I feel at the end of the day, at the end of the week, you know, what etc. 2 weeks later, I was like, yes, like this sounds good. This is where I'm supposed to go. I don't quite know what's going to happen with my shop yet. I'll figure it out later, but I said yes. And it's a really important part, I think, in where I'm at today is because I learned so much. So I was the marketing and HR director for a local body shop, something I knew nothing about. I was like, I don't know anything. I don't have a degree in marketing. Like, what do you want me for? And she's like, you have personality and you have a giving heart and you have an entrepreneur like spirit. And we need that growing our business. And I was like, okay, like that's me. I can do that. And so I stepped into that role, not knowing, you know, what that looked like. And I just owned it. And 6 months later, I ended up selling my tuck shop, making a profit, like stepping into this really confident, you know, like this is kind of scary, but I think I'm meant to do this type feeling. And then that led me, that role as the HR, I really took it upon and it started out, I was just marketing. And then it like a lot of women were like, yeah, I can take more on. I love responsibility. Yes, yes, yes. Keep stretching me thinner and thinner. And the community was watching my weight go down, but they were also watching my confidence and my skill sets and everything, like this mindset of like, I can do anything, like just appear, just one step, one day at a time. They saw that. And so I guess going back to the HR, I really took it upon myself. I was like, I don't want to be just some HR department that like people don't like. Like I want to create culture in this business. I want people to come to me. I realized that if I could get 26 unhealthy body shop guys, like healthier, that they were going to show up and they were going to, you know, like want to work harder and be more productive and more positive. And I was like, and then in return, we all win. So I was like, I started off with like water bottles to the guys and like just simple things that I was like, okay, if I can get them drinking more water and less pop, like that's a win.
Yeah.
And so all of these efforts in this business, which was amazing, but the community again was seeing it. And someone on Facebook she posted looking for a health coach, and about 3 people commented my name. And at first I was like, oh, people think I'm like this healthy person. Like I would have never thought years past, I was the most unhealthy. I smoked 2 packs of cigarettes. Like you just would have never thought about it. And so I reached out to this lady. I said, listen, you're looking for a certified coach. I said, I don't know anything about that, but I do meet with a few ladies ironically, at Panera Bread every Sunday, and I help them create habits. Because through my weight loss journey, I learned to become like a food prep ninja and, ways to de-stress and a spiritual junkie. And like, I just learned all these things to adapt myself. And so I was like, I'll just teach you what I know. And that's kind of where it started. And then through a coaching call with my own coach, it kind of came down to this. I was stretched, right? So 2 full-time jobs. a mom of two, a wife. I sat on lots of PTO, or boards, and I sat on the PTA and like all these things. And I was burning out. I was like, who am I anymore? Like, I don't even know who I'm supposed to be right now. And I was stressed, and I was like, the health coach that's stressed and her health is getting worse. I can't live with myself. And so my coach, she was like, Karissa, what fuels your heart? Like, what does your heart say? And I quiet out the noise and the BS of the world and like people's opinions. And I was like, I just want to help people. Like, I want to, and I'm going to cry because I'm like, I love what I do. I was like, I just want to inspire people. Like, that's what God put me on this earth to do. And she's like, then I think you know what you need to do. I think you need to let go of the corporate job that you do like, but it's dragging you down. You know, you're meant for more. And I need you to step into that. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. And I did it. And that's where I'm at 2 years later, living my best life as a coach and just, you know, inspiring women to boss up.
So you speak about, you know, this moment that you had a huge level of burnout, right? And I know that you help people work through that in your business. Now I know personally, while working with people with burnout, a lot of times they're not stressed. They're just fine, right? How does someone, say, watching this program, realize, first of all, that they're burned out, that they're getting there? And second of all, you know, there's many people say, okay, so what? You know, I have stuff to do. This has to get done. What do you want me to do? You know, there's this stage, I think, that especially before we can admit we need some help, that maybe we have to go through it, or maybe there's a way to recognize it before it's there. But I think we all know someone who's completely stressed out, completely burned out, and they go, well, what do you want me to do about it? This stuff has to get done. So what do you tell that person, and how do you tell someone like how to recognize these signs?
So I think the biggest sign for burnout, honestly, is lack of passion, right? Lack of drive, lack of motivation, irritability. So I'm like, I mean, I can tell when I'm just at a grocery store and someone's having, I'm like, you must have a really crappy job, or you're completely burnt out. Or it's the women that just carry excess weight and they can't seem to lose it. They're like, I do everything. And stress plays a big factor in that. And, you know, besides all the food and the exercise, but stress is huge. So I think like those are the signs of burnout that maybe the people in your life see first, right? I was irritable. I came home and I yelled at my kids for not putting shoes in a cubby. You know, I was like, I just wanted things so organized. And I was like, I just can't handle one more thing. And I realized that, like, I felt like I was like, and, you know, I guess I felt like I was doing it all and not being appreciated for it. So when I was like, honey, why do I have to do all these things? And he's like, you don't. Like, I'm here, I can help you. And I'm like, well, I feel like I have to do all that, like that moment, right? And I think every woman can relate to that, even men, I think too.
I think
So I think those are like your signs, right? It's like, great, yeah, I'm stressed, but I can still manage it. I love when women are like, oh, I manage my stress so well. I'm like, oh, really? How are you doing that? You know, or they're like, I thrive in chaos. I'm like, wow, like that's crazy. Tell me more. Because I used to say those things. I was like, oh, my plate isn't full. I am not functioning. And I'm like, the excuses that you tell yourself to kind of, you know, make it okay for you to feel like this.
I know that I start feeling like every time someone comes up to me, they just want something. And I'm like,
you're like, yes, what do you need?
Actually, I'm like, can I go hide in a closet?
And the sad thing is, it's quite like we keep our stuff together for work and our coworkers and our peers. And then it's when we get home, we take it out on our loved ones. And that's the worst part. And that's what I was seeing. I'm like, it's my job as a mama to show like my kids what like love looks like and what following your passion looks like, and just following like a faith, you know, like it's my job. That's my job as a mama. And what am I doing? Now I'm showing them that I work. I'm stretched way too thin. I'm so stressed. I'm irritable. And now they're like, mom's in a mood. And like, that makes you way more angry. I'm like, I'm not in a mood. So I think those are your signs. Those are like burnout at like 101. Like, you clearly, the people in your life see it first before you feel like I can't handle one more thing that gets added to my plate. And trust me, I've been there. And then I think how is the bigger part. Is that's us. That's why we're called to coaches. We're like, we don't want you to be struggling anymore. Is I think that like when you are experiencing burnout, I think you have to recognize like, I'm not superwoman. Like, let me lower the expectations just a bit. So a year ago, we were all like thriving and doing certain things in our lives and our business. And now we're trying to do the same things and also be the stay-at-home teachers and the hairdresser, like all of that. Like our responsibilities just skyrocketed, and we're still trying to hit sales goals and quotas, and that's leading to burnout. So I think the biggest thing when I help women recover from burnout is getting them back to the basics. First, we talk about priorities. What are your priorities? Like, let's just, because we sometimes get them all like, I have 1,000 things that are like, they're the must, right? They're the fire projects. I'm like, really? It's not. Like, it doesn't matter tomorrow. It's like no reason to stress out about it. So identify their priorities, and then let's get back to building the habit, like get you back into doing the stuff that you used to do before you felt stressed, like pulled in 100 different directions. Like it's the women that are like, when I said, well, when's the last time you did any kind of self-care or, anything for yourself? And they're like, I can't even tell you. I'm like, that's too long. Like if it's more than a week, it's too long. But yeah, they can't even remember when the last time they had fun or they laughed with their kids without feeling like I got to be on my phone, at the same time. So getting them back to the basics, but priorities is number one. You got to know what they are.
So sometimes I've seen people, and I am curious to see how they could maybe come to terms with this. You have people that say, oh, my number one priority is health and family. Health and family is my priority. Yet they stress eat and work until midnight, wake up at 6 and do it again. But my priority is health and family. So how do you help people to really get in touch with what your priorities are, and then how to live as if those are your priorities?
So I walk them through a simple action guide where it's like, let's just name what's important to you. Like if it got ripped away from you tomorrow, what would you fight like crazy to get back? My kids, 100%. My business, 100%. My fiance, 100%, right? Like, but you can't have 100 priorities because there's only so much time in the day. So I break it down to 5. And I know it's nice. And sometimes women were like, well, it's my faith and it's my family. And I'm like, well, great. What are you doing then for that? And they're like, well, I show up and go to church. I'm like, no, I'm not judging, I'm like, but what are you doing? Like, and some women, they'll be like, oh, well, work has to come first because I'm providing for my family. And I'm like, okay, but at the end of the day, your kids can't remember the last time you guys played Yahtzee or did something, that you weren't working at the same time. So I just say top 5. Really, I feel like that's, and they can shift throughout your life. I think different seasons in your life, they shift. But really figuring out what's important to you, and that's your priority, and it's okay. I think it's okay to say my business is a priority. Like I feel like I'm doing good work, and it's okay. And I'm not a stay-at-home mama. I could not like do that role. Like bless those women who can just raise babies. But I did that for 4 years. I was like, I'm gonna go crazy. I need to get back to work. Like I like work. And, like I like meaningful work. I wouldn't, give up anything. But yeah, so identify your top 5 priorities as if they were gonna get ripped away, from you. And then that's it. And then I have a board every day. I'm like super old school, a whiteboard, and I name my 5 priorities. And that is if nothing goes on my calendar unless it supports those priorities. It's self, and I am number 1. I feel like a lot of women think faith and family and career. And I would say it's faith and then being my best self and taking care of me. And then it's my spouse, and then it's my kids. Because and that's just my perspective. Like I need my faith to be able to do my work. But I can't bless everybody else until I bless myself. And a lot of women are like, oh, I'm last. And I'm like, oh girl, we need to reverse that. And you need to be first.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm like, what kind of mom are you if you're so stressed out and it's not even fun? Like that's not cool. And
I think about that verse, and it's to do with finances, but it could do with, any form of energy exchange. But the verse say, we are the lender and not the borrower.
Mhm.
If you are constantly stressed out, you become the borrower of people's energy
Mhm.
instead of the lender of a smile, or the lender of, coming in and transforming a room for the better.
I
Instead,
love
we come in, like you said,
that analogy.
grumpy and, grumpy and stealing in people's joy. So we become the borrower, if not the thief of
Yeah.
joy, because we haven't filled ourselves up. We haven't sought the source of joy and peace and love and all the fruits of the spirit, right? And so if we haven't spent our time filling up with that, and I do the same thing, in the morning, I kind of push my business morning if I can. There's certain shows or something that require an early morning, but if I can, I start my day at 10 a.m. business wise.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and if I have to go later, I go later, but my morning time with God and my meditations and filling up is what makes me be able to work, a 4 or 6 hour day instead of a 8, 10, or 12 or 16 like I used to,
Yes.
and actually get more done because I'm being productive during that time rather than spinning and just being busy for the
Mhm.
sake of being busy, because that's what makes us important in life, right?
Mhm. Yeah. We value like our worth in the corporate world. Like I was like, well, I did X, Y, and Z, and I completed that, and I connected with so many people. And I'm like, great, but like, what did I really do? Like, I'm like, hold on, let me look at my to-do list, and then I'll tell you what I did. Now I'm like, I focus on 2 or 3 main things, and then I'm done for the day because
Mhm.
yeah, I have to protect that energy like nobody's business.
You do. Now, I remember, and I don't know if this is still a thing, but you had something about a daily hustle, and I'm assuming you have a much different definition of hustle than we normally see out there on the hustle shirts and I'm a hustler. So tell me, what is your definition of hustle and your daily hustle?
I love that. Thank you. Great question. Yes. So 5 years ago, the hustle was the grind, right? It was the work, the work, the work. Like I can keep up with the guys and like I can be with the big wigs, and I'm gonna just slave away, and that's what's gonna bring my worth and make me feel good. And I realized it just actually destroyed my family, and I'm like, oh, So I'm like, it really did. I was pulled so far that me and my ex got completely for 5 years down the road. Like we were two individuals sleeping in two different areas. Like it was not. We were like a roommate. Like we just grew so far apart because I allowed that hustle to get the best version of me instead of the opposite. So I'm super passionate about those priorities again. But the hustle for me is like, I'm hustling for my best life. And really then when you define like best life, and I'm like, I'm free, like I feel healthy, I'm thriving, like I feel like a sense of peace and balance in my heart. So I'm hustling for the 5 priorities in my life, and I work hard every day, 100%. Like I'm one of the hardest workers people find, and they meet. They're like, wow, and I'm like, yes, but look at what I'm hustling for. So I'm hustling for self-care. I'm hustling for like feeling like I can just be financially free. I'm hustling for my clients. And by that, it's like sitting back and listening and being their cheerleader, So hustle for your best life. If you're listening, like don't hustle for somebody else's, like idea of, like, hey, build up my company for me. And either way, I mean, I felt like if what I know now, and if I went back into the corporate world, it would be totally different. I wouldn't be stretching into the cocktail hours at the end of the night and, like schmoozing people. Like I would show up who I am and be like, this is what you get, but I'm hustling for my best life.
Absolutely. And also, your best life, I think sometimes we have to really stop and think. And I love your list of 5 things. What is our best life? Because oftentimes I think we're socially conditioned to be told what our best life looks like, right? Our best life looks like this type of house and this much money in the bank and this, and then you'll have your best life. And when people get those, they say, well, why aren't I feeling joyful? Why aren't I feeling all the things I expected to feel when I got the socially uh, like brainwashed, socially accepted best life? And so what are some tips? I know you had your 5 things. What are some tips for really digging in and identifying what that best life means to you, and maybe even stripping away some of those social contracts that we say, well, I got to have a 6-figure job, which again, that does help with some of the other things you might want, like, but I got to have this or I got to have that. But finding out what that is for you, stripped away of, what it was for your parents or what it is for your peers, the people you went to college with. How does someone do that?
How does someone figure out? I think it's just becoming aware of, like, I think for me, it's always been through coaching, honestly. Like, every big season that I've gone through has been with a mentor or a coach. But it's a lot like true personal development, like sitting down and journaling. And at first I'm like, it's okay, nobody's gonna read this. It's okay if I want to say I want to make 7 figures. It's okay. Like, it's okay. Am I using the money for good? Absolutely. I can give more now that I make more, type feeling.
And I want to do it because I want to do it, not because I was told that that's right.
Yeah. Yep. And if I don't want to have kids, then I don't want to have kids. Like, it's, again, it's going back to those early beliefs of, like, especially women. I'm just thinking of what I was told. Like, you go get, you get through high school, you go to college, you get a job, and then, oh, by the way, now you're going to become a mom, and you're going to take 10 steps back, and you're going to try this, like all those things.
Yeah.
Why did I just do that? Like, we just fall into those patterns of, yes, this is supposed to make me happy, and it doesn't. So I'm like, I think the first journaling question is just like, what do I want? Like, what do I give myself permission to want? What do I desire? And act as if no one's going to see that. And then be like, okay, well, now how do I get there? Like, at the end of the day, you have to take responsibility for yourself. I mean, if you want to climb the mountain, it can't just happen like that. You got to do the work. You got to get there. But I think just being honest with yourself, and what do I want? What do I want my life to look like? What makes me happy? And know that it's okay if it doesn't fit in the little box that society is, put a bow on for us, because
Absolutely.
it doesn't all fit. Your life is totally different than mine, and my priorities are totally different, and they all mean totally different things to all of us. So I think that's where it would just start, is becoming aware, just, again, alone time even, and just journaling. I call them dream sessions. Like, what do you want? Like, if I could snap your fingers and wave a wand, like, what would you want? And then they're like, oh, well, I would want this. I'm like, cool. Like, let's work towards that then. Why are you not doing it?
Absolutely.
I think that's what the start to living your best life, and identifying what that looks like.
So I know that you work with, of course, you had a huge body transformation, and you work with mental, physical, emotional, all parts of health, because obviously most of us now know that they're all interconnected. In fact, I was telling someone the other day, who was kind of he's a very large man, and was making fat guy jokes. And, I said, you may take off the weight, but it will never stay off if you continue to make those jokes, because only someone in that position could make the joke. So even if you lose 100 pounds, but you still continue to make those jokes, your brain will find a way to get back to, being the person who can really make those jokes. And so you have to really transform inside and out. And so I want to talk to you about what health, all around health, really means to you. And particularly in this season, I feel like our culture has really swung from, thinner is better, as skinny as you can get, to body positive movement, which I think is really great. And at the same time, we can be body positive and be as healthy as we can. In that spectrum, where do you think, what does health mean for you, and how does someone get there?
So health 10 years ago would have been, how skinny can I get?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, right? I hated the way I looked, and I body shamed, and I looked at a mirror every time I'd walk by. I'm like, you are nasty. Like, no one's going to love you. Like, it's just these things that were stuck into my belief. Like, and I was like, I'm the fat girl and I'm like, and of course I was, like, that's the story I was living. But now I think it's about, like, how overall happiness do I feel? Like, does my body feel good? Like, does it feel good to be in my skin? Like, okay, is my digestion working? Like, the whole holistically, like, is my body functioning the way it should be? Yes. Okay. Is my thoughts healthy? Are my mindset healthy? Am I positive? Is my spirituality, like, intact, or am I feeling pulled? So I feel like health to me is mind, body, and spirit, 100%. But it all goes, it was not like that 10 years ago. And growing up with a mom who would always make fun of, she was always the joke, because she was, you know, I think that we'd rather be the one making fun of ourselves than being made fun of. And so I think that that's where that comes in. But yeah, I grew up with always saying like fat jokes or whatever, you know, and we didn't think anything of it. But I think just the diet industry tells us what we should look like and what health is. And it's not just physical, because I tell you what, when I was 213, I finally got to about 140. I'm like, oh, I can see muscle definition and life is amazing. And I was like, why am I not happy? And then I would go to my nutritionist with a picture of a girl who was even more ripped. I'm like, this is what I want. And he's like, okay, like I'll get you there. And, you know, because that's what he's getting paid to do. But then I got there and I'm like, well, I'm still not happy. Like now it's my butt or my thighs, you know, like I was constantly trying to like make myself look amazing, but it wasn't until I healed on the inside that, you know, that allowed me to just glow. I think that that's really when my health started looking amazing to people. And they're like, holy cow, like confidence, like physically fit, mentally fit, spiritually fit. She's the girl that we want to watch. And that's what, you know, 3 people saw in me and recommended me to do.
That's amazing. And I love that you were transformed so much. And this is something I talk about in my books as far as spiritual fitness is concerned, is that, you know, when you have a transformation so incredible like you did, people notice, they start recommending you because, you know, and I think the same is true with our, you know, faith, that when we went from being a grumpy person who's negative all the time and complaining and, you know, just seeing the wrong in every situation, to being at peace and joyful and lifting the vibration of the room, people notice and then they ask you, hey, what are you doing? And can you teach me the same? And then we can share our faith. But when we're the grumpy one, you know, that is like, you know, complaining about everything, you know, first of all, if we push our faith on someone, it's kind of like someone who has had no physical transformation telling you about the latest fad diet they're on. You know, you're like, okay, if that's what's working for you, you know? And so you have this history growing up where, you know, you saw a certain lifestyle lived in your home, and then it became, you know, just get as skinny as you can, get as ripped as you can, you know, and it was all about physical. What does your diet and lifestyle and healthy choices, what does that look like today?
So it's shifted too. Everything shifts. I think we evolve as we grow and develop. But 2019 in August, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease called Hashimoto's. So for a long time, like I dealt with itchy skin, like eczema galore, like so skin problems, and my eyes were just constantly puffy, like to the point where, you know, like my eyeliner would be touching the top of it was just, and that's what you get used to. And for so long, like I was always cold, like all these different symptoms, and doctors just treat the symptom typically. I'm not saying all of them, but that's what my doctors were doing. They're like, oh, here's a Band-Aid, here's a steroid for that, here's, you know, this for that. And it wasn't until I went to a holistic doctor, because I was at a health conference, and this amazing woman gets on stage. And normally when I hear her, it's too over my head. I'm like, girl, you're a doctor. I can't even understand all that. But something like was just telling me to stay, you know, just stay. And all these women were popping up and sharing their autoimmune stories. And I was like, I have that. I have that. I have that. And I was like, huh, you know, like, and that was one of those moments I was like, I looked up at God when the doctor said, Karissa, you know, you've got an autoimmune disease, and, you know, it's uncurable, but it's all lifestyle stuff. And I looked up at God and I was like, I don't think I can handle one more thing this year, God. And I wanted to cry, right? Because I was like, what is this? Like, what does this even mean? And then I hit the reset. So I was like, okay, I'm going to master this. I'm going to master like this new lifestyle. I'm going to embrace it. I'm going to figure out how to eliminate gluten and dairy and eggs and rice, like all these things that I'm like, huh, you know, that I love to eat as a lifter. I was like, I eat 6 eggs a day, and now you don't want me to eat any of them? Like, that's crazy. So I had to reshift my way of like what food is for the second time, right? When I was overweight and unhealthy, I allowed food to be like my coping mechanism. And then maybe 6 years later, I realized food is just fuel. Like when I was like, just eat the same thing every day because you want to look like Barbie. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. And life was miserable, right? Because I ate 6 boiled eggs a day for like 3 years. Like everything was the same. So I was like, keep it simple, keep it simple. And then to just a year ago to shift every every bit that I eat now. So I don't push certain diets. I think that's a big thing that health coaches get. It's like, what diet should I try? I'm like, how about we just eat clean? You're like, let's have more dinners around the table with family. Let's cook our food. Let's prep our food. Let's prepare our meals, like they used to. And so
real food that came from the ground or an animal.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you've heard of Dr. Caroline Leaf. I like a lot of her materials, and she talks about food-like products that we have, been societally ingrained to think is food. Like a Twinkie is not food. That's not food. Yeah. And so we've been consuming all these food-like products, and then wonder why our bodies are not only obese but also malnourished at the same time.
Yeah. And like all these supplements that I was having to take for just, for a short while until I could my digestion, everything was off. Every single thing was off in my body. And I was like, okay, I'm thin and I'm skinny and I'm muscular and I look like a boss babe, but like energy is low and like all these other things that were the contributing factors. So it's like looking outside of like a bigger picture and allow like a holistic doctor to say, hey, let's come back to just clean eating. And he said, I kid you not, he said, thank goodness you went through a change of transformation because you are 10 times more, like your habits are on point. He goes, I wouldn't normally tell you to start cutting stuff out like this, but he's like, because you're disciplined and you mean business, I'm going to tell you what things are going to help you like right away, really quickly. And so at first I was super overwhelmed, just like I think anyone who's trying to change their life, like go from processed food to cooking, it would be like, So I had to refigure out like how to feed my body again. And it's just, I find like the easiest thing to do is just, clean, simple food, veggies. If I can have a starch, great. And then meat, protein, veggies, and meat, nothing. But yeah. And that's why I think I love working with mamas because it's important to them. They're like, well, I want to be healthy. And I'm like, cool, you're being healthy, but you're still giving your kids like gummy bears for snacks. And I'm like, those aren't snacks. So going back to that point, it's like, let's teach our children so that you could stop this right now. And so bring them into the kitchen, let them help you food prep, let them help you pick out fresh veggies, like teach them while you're learning. And they're going to be like, cool, especially while they're young. I'm like, it's so much easier.
I had stepkids when I was in my early 20s. And I remember the first time I was alone with them at dinner and I put a salad on the table and they're like, well, Daddy doesn't make us eat salad. And at first it was just like, well, I do, so eat it. But so then the next time I was like, okay, let's figure out a new way around this. And they're really kind of artsy kids, they love coloring and drawing. And so I just put a plain bowl of lettuce in front of them and all these different little containers of olives and carrots and dressing and cheese, and I said, we're going to decorate our salads today. So, they spent time decorating their salads and lo and behold, by the time our relationship ended, like they were stealing their grandparents' salads at restaurants because the kids' meal didn't come with salad.
They're like, wait, where's my salad?
Right? They're like, I love salad. Give me a salad. And that's the thing is once you just, like you said, if they're helping you prep, and like, oh, well, this is mommy's food. I get to eat this special thing. Can I have a special thing too?
Yeah. And you want to. I have a funny story. So my son, who's 19, he grew up, half of his life was the unhealthy mama, right? Like I'm Puerto Rican and German food. Like we just ate. Right. And so he grew up with fast food and McDonald's and whatnot. Now my daughter grew up with like the driven mama, the different mama, if you will, by the time she could start forming some of her own habits and stuff at like 3 and 4. So her palate is insane. She will steal my asparagus. I'm like, hey, get out of here, So I have to fight for my food with her. But him, he could be like, My fiance, he's like, I'm not eating greens, just meat and potato type of guy. And I know a lot of guys can relate to that. But I'm like, well, you're not getting any meat until you eat at least 2 broccoli pieces. So like little things. I stayed with my best friend while I was in transition to a move. And I was teaching her, like, I think he's 5, how to eat, like make quinoa. Because a lot of people are like, ew, it's so gross and it's plain. And I'm like, oh, it could be so good though. I love quinoa. So I taught this little 5-year-old how to eat, like how to make quinoa, like my way.
What do you use? I use broth, like a chicken broth or a vegetable broth.
Yep, I do bone broth, but then I bring in my my heritage and I add, it's called Sazan. It's by Goya. It's a brand. So add seasoning to that. And because seasoning, they're like, there's no calories, they're like cheap, but they're flavorful. Yeah. So I add all that while it's boiling, and then I love it. Like I eat it for breakfast, I eat it on salads. It's always like, it's like the go-to, like in your fridge, where most people are like, I don't know even what a go-to for average people anymore, but I'm like, quinoa, salads, all those are go-to.
I say bread and cheese is probably a go-to for, I think about growing up. And, it's funny, I mentioned this because my book is all about like, a physical, but now we're going to the spiritual soul side of things, and like when we grow up, like your daughter, I talk about, how they have those privilege walks where you can start on the like at the goalposts, and they tell kids, like if you've never missed a meal, like on purpose, go 5 yards, and then they tell them to run to the finish line. And of course, some kids are way back there. And I'm like, I think we have, diet privilege and spiritual privilege as well. But like your daughter has grown up with a dietary lifestyle privilege. She grew up liking those vegetables and enjoying the vegetables. And like, it's no wonder. I remember being around a friend who, she's like, oh my gosh, this 2-year-old, or like, I don't know, maybe 4. This 4-year-old just loves veggies. It's so crazy. I'm like, his parents are vegan. It makes sense. Like, of course he loves veggies, And then like, but I feel like we do the same thing spiritually in the church sometimes. Some of us grew up in like this really good Christian home with really good Christian parents and these type of morals and never maybe fell into some of the stuff that someone who maybe wasn't raised that way, has struggles with a whole different host of things and maybe gets judged coming into the church. And I'm like, we have to really check our privilege here. Like your son and your fiance didn't have the privilege of growing up on veggies and loving something that's really good and healthy for their body. And same thing in spirituality and in church. Like we need to realize that some people didn't grow up with the same kind of experiences with God. Like I think of the times I was in youth ministry as a teen and just like connecting with God in this deep way. A lot of people didn't have that. So how can I expect them to be at the same place I am with God or relate, or, maybe they're working through their doubts just now. And I did that at 12, And so I think we have to check our privilege both with, diet and exercise and with spirituality. But however, just like you're saying, we can choose to change this at any time. And you have, and you teach people to do the same.
Yeah. It's just today, I kid you not, we had like a last session with one of my clients. I loved her. And one of her biggest takeaways, because we always talk about like your lessons, and she's like, I realize that I have the power to choose. Like I can like let one thing get the best of me that day. And normally before she worked with me, she was like, I would let this spiral out of control, and then I would get sick because I was stressed and all these things like negative, like everything that could go wrong is now gonna go wrong. And where now she's like, we've created a level of like pause and awareness where I'm like, I can choose to stay here or I can choose to move out of it. And then, she consciously then chooses like, okay, this is not going to get the best of me. So yeah, when you hear those, I'm like, it's the biggest thing is you have the choice. You can play the victim or you can become the warrior of the story. Like you do not have to stay stuck.
Absolutely. And we have to be conscious, first of all, that we do that at all, right? That we're abdicating our choices. I think it's Joe Dispenza who talks about, a mood becomes a habit, becomes a personality. There's a whole host of things, but when a mood lasts too long, suddenly it's, a disposition, then it's a habit, and all of a sudden it's your personality that you've decided to have this maybe grouchy victim, give up on everything, apathetic personality, when it started out as just, a moment in time that you made that choice, like, this moment I feel apathetic, right? And then it's like, well, I feel apathetic this week. I'm going to be a little bit of a victim this month. And, but the thing is, it's not conscious for most people. And what you help people do is gain that consciousness. All right. There was a while back that I abdicated all choice and I just decided to be a victim. I'm going to own it.
Yeah.
And here's what I can do about it now. I can make a new choice, develop a new mood, a new disposition, a new personality. And a new life. And the thing is, and it's interesting because we're just coming, well, I think by the time this airs, we'll still be in the holidays. And, we all have family that sometimes like to, let's say the average person likes to sit around and complain and be in that victim, abdicate their choices. And, it's hard sometimes to sit around and be like, you can choose otherwise,
Give me the honest slap.
We're gonna have a little bit too much around the Christmas tables by the time this.
You're right. Pump and brakes around Christmas. But.
Well, and that's the thing I think too, is that when we are that example of someone who suddenly isn't complaining anymore, suddenly is making choices for their life, this is where, first of all, it's going to be like, well, what's wrong with her? Why isn't she, complaining with us? But then it's, she's a lot happier than everyone else. She's more peaceful and she doesn't complain. And I can know that she speaks well of everyone around her. So she'll speak well of me when I leave.
It's like another key to my success is I'm like, declutter the people in your life that are toxic, right? Like that's one of those, like, I don't even see the negativity in the world. Like if you're on my Facebook page and you post something that, like, I just unfriend, I'm like, I ain't got to have you in my life. Like there's 1,000 other people that want to like follow me.
When people speak about social media being like toxic, I'm like, it is?
I'm like, what's going on in the world? What's happening? I didn't know about COVID until I finally went to the store because I don't have like cable necessarily. So I don't consume myself with the negative news. I remember someone was complaining that I got a tattoo and they were calling it unprofessional on my Facebook page. And I reached out and I was like, hey, I'm going to unfriend you now because I do what makes me happy. And I'm sorry you don't, accept that. And they're like, no, I'm just kidding. And I was like, well, I'm sorry. Like, it's negative stuff. And it's really hard to peel some of those friendships that aren't nourishing you away. That's like really hard, I think, for people to say, well, like, how do you get rid of people that I'm like, you'll never get rid of them, but you don't have to put yourself in that situation. Like it's that I don't go out with the same girlfriends I did 10 years ago because they're still complaining about them being overweight and unhappy in their relationships. I'm like, I want to surround myself with like thriving, positive entrepreneurs that are going places because that motivates me. So I'm like, get rid of people and things and, detox for a little bit if you need to. It just don't let that stuff consume you because it will. It gets you to that rut and then you fall right back into old things. So
I want to get into a couple more of your success tips, but before that, I want to talk a little bit about that friendship circle because I talk about this a lot too, and I've done it several times. Sometimes you may even have to go through a minute or, just a little season of life where you don't have a lot of friends around because you were spending time with, the kind of people that you used to be and that you're trying not to be anymore, maybe. And the statistics show we are the collective weight of the 5 people we spend our time with, the collective income of the 5 people we spend the most time with, and of course, the collective thoughts and emotions and happiness and so forth. And so how do you recommend for people, say they've kind of started to distance themselves from people that are complaining, that just aren't where they want to go, they're not going the same direction anymore? What environments do they need to put themselves in? What kind of things do they need to start doing to develop a new top 5 that is going in the same direction that they are?
Well, I think if you get rid of people in the nicest way, then you need to add people, right? You can just take out the old and in with the new. I get a lot of Facebook friend requests and every single person I said, can I ask what brought you to my page? And they're like, you know what, sometimes I get, well, I'm trying to follow positive people and I'm told you're positive. And I'm like, yes, come on over. Like, you're my people then. You're trying to better your life. So out with one, in with the new. So people, give yourself some boundaries around, social media. Like, okay, if when I notice myself comparing my life to others, because that can lead down the spiral, like, now it's time to shut it off, or even the networking groups, when we think business, right? I've been in networking groups that just get so catty and they just start to complain about things. And I'm like, okay, time for me to move to a new networking group. Like, I love y'all, but you don't serve me anymore. So I would just say, whatever you take out or that you start to, notice brings you down, then put it back in with something better. So, if you're trying to lose weight, hang out with some people who have already been successful. Like you said, you are the sum of the five. And if I want to go places, then like in certain things, certain areas of my life, then that's who I want to hang out with. There was a time I lost my way with faith, and I was like, look at the people I'm hanging out with. It's no wonder, like, none of them value faith or going to church or anything. Like, in fact, now I feel awkward telling them I want to go.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is a problem. So when you can start to realize that, it's time to shed those people and recognize that it's not like a bad thing. Like, they served a purpose at one point in your life, and now you're just moving on to the next. And I don't think that, let go of what people, their opinions and their beliefs of you, and just do you do you, and you make you happy. And if that's following certain people or certain, books, I would say is a huge thing. That's one of the things that I love filling my head with, is just like constant positive personal development type books. I'm like a junkie. I'm like, if I could get paid to read every day, I would, But 10 years ago, I didn't even read a book. I was like, I think in high school, when my mentor said, when's the last time you read? I'm like, definitely in high school. Kind of like when fitness coach is like, when's the last time you ran a mile? And you're like, definitely in high school, when I was forced to. Like, everything went back to when you had accountability and you were told to do stuff. And you go into an adult and you're like, cool, I don't have to read. I don't have to exercise. I don't have to be a boss. Like, nobody's like checking in on me. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, I'm not making any money. And I'm sitting here and I'm complaining about life.
Yeah. There's an expression some colleagues of mine used to say, they'd say, I'm an adult. I can eat candy at midnight, And it's like, yes. And as an adult, you don't, because that's not good for you, That's part of adulting.
Yeah.
Because, like, yeah, I don't have to read the books, and I don't have to run the mile, and I can eat candy at midnight. And I choose to run the mile, and I choose to read the books, and I choose to forego the candy most of the time.
The benefit far outweighs that moment of desire, like the moment at 4 a.m. when I'm like, I don't want to get up. And then I'm like, get up, because you're going to feel so amazing afterwards. And so, yeah, it's just like, you have to just recognize it as an excuse and be like, okay, do it, Karissa. Like, I literally like, it's time to boss
up. So tell us, okay, so you're great at, all right, that 4 a.m, boss up, wake up, do your thing. What are some of the challenges that you still face?
I honestly still face that I'm not enough sometimes. I think that old belief, it was pounded in my head from my son's dad, who it was an abusive relationship for about 3 years. And for almost every day, I was told that I was worthless and that I was nothing, and that I was property pretty much. And you start to believe that. And the lesson here is that what you hear, you start to believe in your thoughts, and that's how you act. And so again, if that's true, then I can also change what I hear, and what I believe, and the seeds that I plant and what I allow grow. But I still, every now and then, I still struggle with not thinking that I'm enough. As a coach, I'm like, maybe I should throw in another gift, like maybe that will sweeten the pot, instead of just recognizing that what I offer is amazing. I see it with my relationship. I'm like, and what I'm doing is enough. Is he going to be around? And a lot of that, I think, is just based on fear, of like, I don't want to disappoint, or I don't want to, have another marriage down the road that would fail. So, and recognize that I'm like, okay, it is enough, and I'm not going to let that mistake happen again, because I've learned such a good lesson before. I was, I have to learn the lesson sometimes 3 times before I realize that on certain things. But yeah, I'm like, I still will, every now and then I walk by a mirror and I'm like, are you enough? And then, it's always the comeback. It's yes, you are. Right? Like I always wear a bracelet during the day that says I am enough. It's my anchor. It reminds me, when I'm feeling doubtful, that I'm enough. When I go on stage and I'm really nervous, I'm like, my story isn't enough to inspire people. And then they're like, yes, it is enough. Like, it's just, yes. So that would be something I still struggle with every now and then. I like to think that I'm Wonder Woman, but at the end of the day, I'm a human, and I'm a mom, and I'm a boss, and I still struggle with those things.
Yeah, I think so many people struggle with it. There's, of course, entire I am enough movements, because it's such a common thing for everyone to struggle with. And, I think there's a certain amount where it's very human and almost healthy. I read somewhere where imposter syndrome, if you don't have at least a tinge of that, you might just be arrogant and not, leveling yourself up, because you just think I'm fine, I don't need to improve,
Yeah.
So I think that's incredible, and something for us all to, take into consideration, that even people who are boss women and on their A game, physically, mentally, emotionally, we still have these doubts. And not only do we have these doubts, but they are human, they're normal. And our answer can be, there's no need to doubt.
Yeah.
We can always answer ourselves with, you may, that's human, it's okay.
Yeah.
And you are enough.
Yes. Yeah.
What brings you?
I have a phrase that I say, hit the reset, and it's like a 5-step process. It's literally like, when you're feeling like, any moment, or like, this is really tough, it's like, hit the reset. Cause it's just creating that space of like, okay, I think I can handle it, and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm like, hit the reset, let's go.
So what is that 5-step process?
Yeah, well, the number 1 is, what am I struggling with? Just becoming aware of my problem. Like, okay, like, clearly I feel like there's lack in some area of my business if I don't feel that I'm enough. Just say that would be an example. So what am I struggling with? I'm a huge cheerleader for what's 1%, like one thing you can do. So if you're struggling with your weight, right? One thing, typically drink more water. Like a lot of people are like, I know I need to drink more. I'm like, okay, then that's what we need to do. As simple as it is, 1%, right? Like 1 water bottle needs to go to 2 every day, 1%. So what's one thing you can do to get you out of that struggling situation, or out of even just the moment of overwhelm, right? Like, oh, I'm overwhelmed, I'm stressed out. What's one thing I can do? The third is, who are 3 people that can help me? I used to think that it was all on me. That weight of that responsibility is all on me. And I would be praying for more patience, like, just give me more patience. And instead I was like, I don't need to do it all by myself. Like, recognizing that, I have the Lord to help me and guide me. And then 2 other people that I can talk to, find your tribe. So that's number 3. And then the 4th is, what do you need to let go of, which I think is the hardest for people to do. Because to me, that's the excuses and the stories that they've been telling themselves for so long, that I'm not enough. I don't have enough schooling, all these things. I'm a woman. This is a male, but I'm like, ugh, that's we got to let it go, let it go. And then the last one is just reconnecting with your why, right? Your passion. And if you don't know your why, then you need to figure it out, because as an entrepreneur, some days I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, wouldn't it just be easier to go work for somebody else?
Right.
Yeah. Like, I think we all have it, even very successful entrepreneurs. We have those days of doubt. We're like, oh, I would just give it all away. But then you reconnect with that why, and you're like, oh yeah. And I read the stories, and I read the testimonies, and I read the thank you notes, and the life-changing breakthrough, letters that get sent to me. And I'm like, that's why I do what I do. And then I'm like, who would have thought I would have yesterday wanted to give up on my business? Are you kidding me? So it doesn't matter what you're struggling with. I find that those 5 things, and at first I had to journal, like every time I was struggling, like I would sit down and I would write it all down. And now it's become such a process and like a mindset. It's like, it's ingrained, where it's like, again, I have a moment of doubt. or a struggling time. And I'm like, hit the reset. Like, who could help me? What's one thing I can do? What do I need to let go of and reconnect with my wife? Like all those things. And I'm like, and done. And it's done in like 10 seconds. So I just don't allow myself to get stuck in that rut zone. And I just hit the reset.
That's great. As you were talking about more water, I just want to share this amazing thing. I only heard of it recently. Have you ever used water beads? They're these little beads. And so I've been bad. I've only had 2 bottles of water today. But once I have this third, I'll move the bead down.
Oh,
and then
cute.
you keep track of how many water bottles you've had for the day. So
that's amazing.
yeah, I found it on like Etsy or something. So I just want to share with people. It's such a cool little invention. And
I know, because there are days where I'm like, is this my third or my fourth?
exactly, right? I'm like,
I need
forgot.
4 today.
Today I've been more on the tea train than on. I'm like, there's water in tea. It's decaffeinated. But yeah, I needed to get 2 more done by the end of the day, and the little beads help me remember.
You're like, dang. It's a little bit form of accountability, if you will.
Exactly. So would you share with us, for our audience out there, what is one thing that brings you peace that we can really learn from?
One thing. Probably just doing my best. Like progress over perfection. I spent many years trying to shift that and work on that. I think just it brings me peace knowing that today I did my best and tomorrow's a new day, So I think that that's one thing, no matter what it is you're going through. It's like, did I do my best today? Like, can I lay my head down and know that I gave my all for my health and my faith and my business and my family and my spouse, like all that. And I'm like, yeah, I feel good. I'm at peace. And that's, I feel so amazing. Like, I'm like, I am so free. And by free, like, because I feel at peace, like, it's just such an amazing feeling to know that you're doing your best and you don't have to compare. And, cause again, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even, I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't get enough done today.
Right. There's so much to get done for the next year.
I'm like, girl, the list will always be there. Trust me. And especially the women I work with, they're a lot of go-getters. They're fear-facing. They're like, I want to change my life. So they have like this drive to them already. But yeah, they're like, they live in these to-do lists and they're swamped by them and they're like suffocated by it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, oof, like just hearing about it. But I used to be that. I'm like, I have 5 different notebooks for 5 different to-do lists. It's like home and this and this, and it was overwhelming. But yeah, I lay my head down and I feel very at peace with my life. I'm like, I'm the happiest I've ever been. I'm the healthiest I've ever been. And it's because every day I get up and I do my best. I can't do anything else any more than that.
Absolutely. And in doing your best, tell us, what's the next thing that you're working on?
Let's see. Next thing that I'm working on, I'm really trying to grow my speaking business. Honestly, like I have another book in the works. I just got done finishing a collaborative book called Women Who Boss Up. It's a story of 15 women who have overcome adversity, right? We all have a story. We all come from a place somewhere, and we all tell our secrets, if you will, in that book. So I have another book that's done. It'll be ready in the Q1, but I'm like, okay, all those things are great. I have a podcast starting in February, but I really want to be able to share my word, like share my story. I want to take what I'm doing on like a small level, which is coaching. Like I can only work with so many people. But if I can start speaking and sharing my story in front of thousands, like I can be impacting the world. I can be influencing women all across to say, if she can do it, I can do it. And
that's great.
And so that's what I would love to be working on. Working with the amazing Les Brown as a speaking coach. I'm getting ready. It's a group program, but I absolutely love it. Les Brown, like just a Wednesday night just fills your tank up. You're like, oh, I forgot I was not watching you. I was supposed to be learning,
Absolutely.
And just investing in myself so that like I'm going to work with another speaking coach called Dee Dee Wong, just another female, I think, influencer. But I feel like if I want to go places and hit those goals, that I got to work with people. I can't get there alone. So
absolutely. If we want to be the best basketball player, we have to have a basketball coach. If we want to be the best speaker, you've got a speaking coach. I know I hired a speaking coach about a year and a half, 2 years ago now, when I first started getting back into speaking, even though it's something that's come natural to me my whole life, like that was the one class when I came back into the American school system. I was not doing well in most of the courses, but I had to do a speech. I hadn't prepared a thing, and I just got up there and knocked it out of the park. But at the same time, I still need a coach. I still need a coach for, this is a different kind of audience. This is a different kind of this. This is the new challenge. This is how I'm going to get better at that. I'm working with my natural strengths and speaking from a place of getting better each time, making sure I really connect with the audience in a way that is meaningful for that one. So I love that you're getting coaching. I love that you're bossing up in all areas. If someone is interested in, say, like, wow, that really impacted me, everything that you had to say, I have a group that just really needs to hear this. If you'd come speak for us, or I want to coach with you, where do they find you?
The best place is my website. I mean, I could send you to Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and all that great stuff, but my website houses, my stories. It houses my coaching. It houses my speaker media kit. Like, everything about me is out there on that website. Group programs, one-on-one coaching, doesn't matter. It's all there. If you're looking for daily inspiration, though, I would highly suggest following me on Facebook. Every day it's, whether it's a mindset or a physical, or like, look what I cooked today, it's clean and healthy, like you can do it too. But website, which would be 365dailyhustle.com.
Incredible. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today, Karissa. Make sure you follow Karissa Williams on Facebook. Check out her website. We'll try to get that up on the screen. And until I see you again, may the Lord bless and keep you, cause his face to shine upon you, and nourish your soul.